39?
39.
Still here?
It's impossible not to say it now.
Possible. Oh, you got some char all over your...
Sorry. Yeah. Sage and char.
I'm stressed out that we don't have a topic.
Yeah, so the topic is stress.
Oh, well, that makes it easy. Problem solved.
Well, this is not, it's not going to be a popular opinion, but all stress is basically the story that we create, right?
The drama of our lives.
Yeah, like the drama, the Shakespearean play that is our life. And so we can just end the episode right here. Like,
Shortest episode ever. Thanks for listening. The key takeaway is don't do that.
Yeah, but I think it was like a week ago or so, you and I were talking about what is it that is actually necessary for us to live, like survive, not like on the drip machine, but like, survive.
The actual bare necessities.
Yeah, the bare necessities.
Some sort of basic food.
I mean, basic
water.
Food, water, shelter.
Shelter.
I mean, shelter could be like just in like an overhang or a cave, right? Warmth, depending on where you are in the world. I don't know. I mean, but if the temperatures are kind of like even, then you don't even need.
That's kind of shelter kind of takes care of that.
Yeah.
Air, I guess.
But air.
That seems to be plentiful.
That's plentiful still. And that's it. Right. And so if life is just about being, just being, that is the only thing that is necessary. Everybody could be just at peace and harmony within themselves, sitting still, and then occasionally, reaching for food, occasionally reaching for water, going in the back of the cave, peeing and pooping as needed.
I pee and poop outside of my cave so it doesn't stink it up.
Sure. Whatever. I mean, it depends how big the cave is. You might have like a little alcove that is a pee and pooping area. But yeah, you might get stinky. But do you care about stinky? That's another thing, is right? Or do what? Right. So
we say that as we just cleaned up stinky cat pee.
When I say all of this, I am not saying that I'm not, privy to this problem.
Right.
This is an affliction that I cause myself as well.
That while it is possible to live like that, nobody does.
No, but what I'm saying is our idea of stress is something that is causing us anxiety or heartache, or is not going the way we want it to, or is in some sort of flux of unknown. And so the stress is basically our perception of a current situation.
Yeah.
So, and then what's even worse, really, most of the time, it's of a future situation that we're propagating into manifestation.
That
or
may or may not even come
the
to
past
pass.
situation, which is even worse. Something that's unchangeable, but we're stressing about it.
Yeah.
From the past.
Right. I mean, assuming you have all those basic needs met, which I think most people do. I know there are people without shelter. I know there are people who are hungry, but
we'll just generalize.
We'll just generalize that most people have access to shelter, food, and water. Everything else, if you're complaining about it, it's the fluff. And I like the fluff, right? I like having.
No, we live for fluff.
I like having, cozy beds and nice meals. Not yes, I could live on, some sort of sustenance pill that would give me the required calories. Sure, but I like good food. I like diced cacao and a cup that means something to me. It's all those things that I like. But at the same time, it's like, well, if any of those things goes wrong, now I'm upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't even know.
No, but that's it, right? And like in the meditation, we had their instructor say today, not a meditation, in yoga, we had their instructor say today that, it's a story. Let go of all the stories, right? And then, like in that moment, it became very obvious that it's just everything is a story.
Mhm.
Stress is a story,
Yeah.
and that's not going to be popular for people to go. Well, I have all these things to worry about. Yeah, but you're choosing
Right.
to to have them to worry about, choosing that as your story, and then choosing that to be something that is a net negative as opposed to something that is not a thing at all. It is right. If we take ownership of our life, like realizing that we have come here to facilitate experience, facilitate fluff, facilitate in relationships, facilitate nuances and issues, right? And we have come in here and we really want to believe that and we really want to live that. Then stress is just like anything else. There's a choice in what we came here to play.
I think there's a big connection between, the things that one is attached to is what makes a lot of stress. If you're not attached to the results of the Japanese election, I don't know, I assume they have elections and whatever. I don't
I thought
know.
they have an emperor.
I thought the emperor got uh, the the German election, whatever. Where it doesn't matter. Just pick a country you don't have any strong feelings about, and I assume they have elections. I don't even know who's running. I don't know when it is. May have happened. May be coming. I don't know. I have zero attachment to that. And if you said that this guy versus that guy is gonna win, I have no charge on that. Therefore, I have no stress on that. But I know there are plenty of people who have very strong feelings and charges about, let's say, the 2024 United States election.
I always, do you have a charge about
No,
election?
it's just an easy topic that I know people have a lot big charge about.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
And so because there is an attachment to that result, um, I think that's where the stress comes from. It's from the attachment.
I I think maybe this is a better way to look at it. Attachment, but we come here to play a narrative, like to be identified as something, right? To believe in something, to accomplish something, right? So you come here with this is almost like what you think is the goal, right? Like, oh, one day I'm gonna have a nice car, and that's the goal, and one day I'm gonna I don't know, whatever your story is, right? Everybody has this story, and it's kind of subconscious most of the time, right? And then you're trying to weave your narrative, right? Your physical form, but your cognitive form, your thinking form, your performing form,
Mold your life experience.
life experience, right? Into this narrative, right? And so the attachment comes in of how much are you married to the narrative. But what's more important is it is completely subconscious most of the time. So the reason why we stress out about it is because we are somehow trying to identify or trying to become something subconsciously, right? Obviously, becoming with hopes of undoing how subconsciously we feel about ourselves for real, right? So, like all that trauma that we are holding on to, the narrative into our life forward is really kind of like what is the opposite of this trauma, or how does the person look like when they're not damaged, or how does the person look like when they don't have mommy issues, or how does the person look like when they don't feel poor, or how does the person look like when they don't feel unloved, right? So all of those things is the narratives that we're trying to progress forward, because deep inside we're trying to offset the trauma that is actually holding that narrative captive.
Yeah. I mean, that's like there's all these stories of people who have achieved great success, um, and are still unhappy, but they've achieved great success. And when it comes down to why, it's, well, I had to, I I ended up being the, you know, Super Bowl winning player dot 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 because when I was in third grade, coach told me I would never amount to anything, and I somehow subconsciously decided I've got to prove him wrong, or I became some sort of titan of business, dot 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 because my dad didn't think I could do it, and I had to prove him wrong. A lot of it I think has to do with I've got to prove somebody wrong, somebody who may be dead by now, somebody who you may some coach from 40 years ago. Who's this guy?
Yeah.
Um,
But that's a narrative in the
yeah,
story that we're trying to progress
yeah,
forward. Subconsciously, of course, not realizing that that is some sort of trauma that we have trapped that we're not allowing ourselves to
right,
recognize.
yeah,
And instead of recognizing and actually going, wait, what am I actually doing this for? We blindly chase the narrative and we chase the story.
yeah. And there, I don't remember who it was that had that. There was a talk about it. Um, but she was saying that she went over to some famous like actor or director or someone's house to talk to him, and he had achieved
It was
a
some motivational self coach
yeah
type of
a,
speaker. She's British, I think, but I
a,
don't know.
a, a objectively great success. Lots of money, Oscars and Emmys and whatever. Anybody would look at this person and go, you have reached the pinnacle of success in your field, and they're still fundamentally unhappy and still feel like they have to do more. They have not yet achieved what they think is success. But the truth is, they would never achieve. There is no place that they could ever get to where they would be happy, because they fundamentally feel broken, or I guess not enough. I think was her thing. Same thing with business. Now, if only I had 100,000. Okay, you get that. Oh, if only I had 1,000,000. Okay, you get that. Well, then 10 million. Then I'll feel fine. No, well, $100 million. I couldn't possibly spend that in a lifetime. Oh, well, okay, well, you get that, and you're just that's still. It's never about the stuff. It feels like it's about the stuff. It feels like if I have the stuff, if I have the money, if I have the fame, if I have the car, if I have the wife, if I have the Oscar or whatever, then I will have arrived. Then I'll be happy. But there's this you're trying to there's a you feel a hole in you, and you're trying to shove money and partners and Oscars into this hole, but it's just a bottomless pit.
Yeah. In that case, it is a reach for something that you're trying to reach for in order to come across a specific way or feel a specific way.
Yeah.
And then the stress there would be, the stress of like, I'm not reaching it. I'm not there yet. I am
Yeah.
not. How do I get there? Oh,
Right.
what? And so you're just in that like frantic mode, trying to achieve something.
Right.
Now, let's say you get a motivational coach, and then they like help you design a plan, or you design a plan, right? To achieve that, let's say.
Well, okay, yeah. That's the wrong thing to do, but yeah.
Yeah, but right, but and so you don't feel as frantic about it because you feel like you have a
Yeah. I
plan.
think when you're doing it, when you're, if you've reached 1,000,000 and you don't feel good, but you know that at 10 you'd be all right. When you're working your way up to 10, I think you probably almost feel okay,
No, you feel good
because
because
you're like
you're
you're
offsetting.
getting to
You're offsetting.
your perceived goal. But once you
Yeah, yeah,
hit your goal, you're like, "Oh, it turns out all that was for nothing, because I don't feel any better at 10,000,000 than I did at 1,000,000."
yeah. Well, it's because you're right. You're getting yourself distracted with a narrative towards a sense of accomplishment, right? And then half the time, really, it is the journey from yes to no that is the actual narrative of accomplishment. That is your life, right? That is where the life is that journey to see through yourself, to see through your pitfalls, to see how you accomplish something, to see how you overcome obstacles, right? And so we came here for the journey, not for the before and the after. You know what I mean? And so the this is kind of like slightly off the topic, but if you get to the after, y- hopefully you will see that, oh, it was the journey that I was satisfied with and not with the end outcome.
Right.
And then the end outcome basically you think would be some sort of pinnacle of transformation where you're like, oh, the angels
Right.
sing, the heavens open, and Jesus comes, and you're saved or whatever.
Right.
But the truth is, we are here on this journey,
Right. It turns out that the journey is the goal.
right? Well, there's no goal, but right, but yeah, but
There
yeah.
is no goal.
But what we think is the goal is
Yeah.
the end, but it's actually the path.
The process of it.
The process is what the life experience. And so the stressors can come in when you're at the point A, but wanting to be at point B. And then basically you craft your life through that journey, right? And so it is overall a motivational factor, right? But I would suggest to be conscious of the point A and why you're desiring to be at point B.
Right. I don't think there's anything wrong with having
Yeah.
goals and desires. Oh, I want to, own a house. Oh, I want to travel to Europe. I don't think there's anything wrong with those intrinsically.
Yeah. But if you're
It's
not aware,
the
then the
danger.
stressors along the journeys will be there blindly.
Yeah, the danger is I'm so unhappy right now, but I'm pretty sure that whenever I have X or achieve X or do X, then I won't be unhappy. Now there are, there are things that, most people would agree are unpleasant. Most people don't want to be in jail, don't want to be in an abusive relationship, don't want to be in an abusive job or something like that. And yes, there's nothing wrong with having a goal to get out of those situations. But at the same time, I believe that every situation that life presents you, and some of them are good and some of them are bad, there is something to get out of it.
Well, what is there to get out? There's only one thing to get out of everything. It quite literally is a blanket statement is awareness. Right? Everything has happened for you to experience awareness of that moment. And if you're blind to the story, if you're blind to your own narrative, if you're blind to why you're on the path from point A to point B, you miss the journey just because the only thing you see is the goal in sight, which is, yes, is a great motivational, path, right? It is something that gets people riled up and gets actions placed into the world. But every single moment, in fact, every single stressor that you have in the front of you is a moment for awareness of self, not of the moment, but awareness of self. And so, what we're meant to do, if there's a goal, I guess, is to see our own story and to see our own narrative. Excuse me, and to see through the narrative that we have come here to play, or in our case, have been playing for the last 40 years, right? If you're at some point in your life and you can pause and go, I'm here in the now. In this moment, I'm in now. What has gotten me here, right? Is there things that I have been happy about? Yes, no, whatever. Are there things that I'm hoping that will not happen to the future that happened in the past? Yes and no. But in this moment of the now, you quite literally have an opportunity to restart the narrative.
Yeah.
And see through the past, see through what you're projecting into the future and realize, wait, this moment of now, this stressor right here is my choice into allowing this to be my narrative. I mean, it sounds terrible because obviously this very much points out that we're responsible for quite everything in our life, which most people don't want to hear. But if you're willing to hear that you are in charge and you're responsible, that is a huge point of empowerment.
Right, because then it's, on one hand, it's up to you to get out of that situation, but on the other hand, you have the power to get out of that situation.
Because you placed yourself in it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And so we tend to run away from that understanding. The understanding is that we are responsible for everything in our life. Because that sure does suck ass to recognize that everything that has happened and everything that will be happening is our fault, let's say, if there's such thing as to blame, right? There's no one else to blame. There's never like, oh, it's Bob's fault. If only Bob wasn't there when I walked into that store, everything would have been fine.
Right.
Right. And so we spend our lifetime assigning ownership of our choices to other people. But every point of stress, every point of happiness, every point of sadness, every point of an accident, every point of a miracle is there to build awareness of that moment and then teach us that it's not Bob, right? It's not the universe's fault. It is our choice because we are the representation of the wholeness here. And this is the game. This is the narrative that we're playing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like as much as that sucks to hear or to understand, but I would advise allowing yourself admittance into that truth.
Right.
Not because I'm saying it and not because you're saying it, because inside, deep down, you know that you're the owner of your life. Right? And sooner or later, when we stop blaming everybody else for things that happen to us, we have to see through that, wait, I am choosing for this to be my narrative. Now, it could still be the truth. The situation can still be the truth. But your choice and how you see it and perceive it and what you take out of it could completely flip and be a blessing as opposed to a curse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh, look, here's this point of stress that it obviously sucks ass by all definitions of my past. But what if I take it and go, wait, what am I learning out of this? What is the story that I have created and narrated, and now I'm trying to see through it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to know that, if you're stressed out about something, it's your fault and responsibility on many levels. It's your fault because you're bothered to get stressed about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, someone next to you may not be stressed about it.
But you're stressed about it because it's a trigger into
Right.
a discombobulation of your being. Like somehow this throws a ratchet into the gears.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
like the gears
Because
are like flopping.
there's this cognitive dissonance of, the life experience that I want does not match up with the life experience that reality is showing me.
Yeah.
Right. Whether that's, Bob in the office or, the balance of your bank account. There's some difference between where you are and where you quote want to be or think you should be, if you want to look at it that way, as if it's owed to you. Yeah. But it's your fault, I guess, to word it that way, that you have a perceived notion of where you should be.
Yeah, attachment to a definition.
So you have come up with this, oh no, when I'm, 35, I should have $1 million. You've come up with this. Maybe someone told you, maybe someone planted the seed, maybe you read it somewhere, maybe you just decided that, by a certain age I should have achieved X or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't matter. And then if that doesn't come to pass, that dissonance between reality and perceived how reality is supposed to be creates stress. So you created the stress because you set this goal subconsciously, sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. But B, you have the stress because you're allowing it to happen too.
Yeah.
With
money,
there's nothing inherently wrong with the goals.
Right? With money, it's easy to see because like a lot of people do set monetary goals of like, oh, by X, I will have so many.
Yeah, I've got to save this or pay off this or whatever.
Yeah, no, and those are great in the sense that you have this sense of accomplishment in the journey from point A to point B.
And for a lot of people, that helps, having some sort of structure. Oh, well, if I actually put 10% into my car loan, then I can pay it off. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with the goals.
But that's the game you're playing. That is a narrative in the story that you're designing, right? You're creating your future.
Right.
You're creating a narrative of your future. Here's how I get from point A to point B. And in this case, it's life savings or paying off a car loan, right?
Right. And yeah, and that's all fine and good. Nothing wrong with that. But realize that you have created this projection of how future life is supposed to be that may or may not come to pass. And the difference between reality and that causes stress, especially if it's in a bad way. If it's in a good way and you go ahead and you hit your goal, maybe even early, it doesn't necessarily register as stress, but it just passes over. A lot of times it doesn't even register as, the opposite of stress. You'd think, oh, well, I hit my goal. Everything is super duper amazing. And, the angels are singing. But no, it's just, okay, great. Now I've paid off my loan. End of story. There's
Yeah.
the opposite of stress is incredibly rare,
Yeah. Well, no.
especially for, these achievements.
Yeah, achievements. Yeah. That one's easy to see through, right? You would get stressed of like, oh, look, I wanted to put 10% every month, but this month I can't hit 10% because of this and this and this. And you get stressed out about missing your goal or not hitting your mark, right? Or whatever. And then, so that's like almost easy to see because it is a monetary or
You can graph it.
quantitative interpretation. But most of the time what we're stressed out about is our relationships not going the right way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Money is almost easier to see through because now, of course, I will say this. I will sideswipe this to go. Money for me is tied to safety. So anytime something goes awry with money, to me it ties back to safety, right? Because so then through that narrative, through that story, I can see, okay, anytime I'm stressed out about money or I have something that comes up about money, my trigger that it triggers is the safety. And so thus, if I'm stressed out and I'm like, oh, I'm all frazzled and just too much, it is a great opportunity, like yesterday, for me to step back and go, wait, I'm just getting triggered into my pain body of safety, right? All of this is actually completely unnecessary. In fact, it goes back into the past so many years that is completely irrelevant. The past is so far behind, and in no way the actions of that past have progressed themselves into the future to where it's actually even a thing. But because I was so wrapped up in the grand scheme of less money equals possibility for me being on the streets without food in the cold, right? So that basic need was being threatened to me. Then I did not see through the trigger, right? And the trigger is like, why am I stressed out? Oh, because the pain body that I still hold, right, and possibly will hold for a long time, is being triggered. And so then the second the awareness came in, I was like, oh, look, I'm blind. Once again, the stress is there because I am blind to the pain body that it triggered within me. Right.
Yeah.
And so the monetary things are easy because we can kind of go, okay, what does money mean? Money means safety. What does safety mean? Well, heck, it just means, in my case, pain body of survival. Right. And so therefore, I can easily push that narrative into. But what relationship stress is, and I think most of the stress that we have, unless you're living in the empowered, disempowered, no, in a poverty-stricken state of being, like I grew up in Ukraine, most of the people in the world, I would, maybe this is a very privileged statement to say, is have their basic needs met. They are not cold because they have heating, they have food on the table, and they're not afraid that they're going to get kicked out of their home and be on the streets, right? So with me, those three things were
Always present.
always present because I kind of design a story and the narrative to where that is my truth forward.
Right.
And so the trigger that I'm still trying to work on is just letting go of those three things.
Right. I mean, those are I know you're not a huge fan of Maslow's pyramid, but those are the bottom of it, right? Food, shelter.
That is what I'm saying.
The basic.
But it's easy. What I'm saying is the basic necessities. It is easy to see why you would stress will arise because they're so dense and they're so prominent that like the trigger that registers our survival is easy to see through.
Because it really matters for the survival of our meat sack of a body.
Yeah.
Right.
So those stressors are easier to identify of us having triggers into them because they're kind of like at the core of like, wait, am I alive or not?
Yeah.
Right.
Work your way up there. What's at the top? Self-actualization, I think.
Right.
It's like, well, nobody's dying in the sense that their heart is stopping beating because they are or are not, don't have time for self-actualization, right?
Yeah.
That's if you're down here in the I don't have food for myself and my children today. What am I going to do? It's like, oh, that doesn't even matter. I can't even bother.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. But that's a big trigger for me, right? Like not only do I feel that as my pain body that has, is kind of like pulsating there, um, because I still have not let go of that not having food for me as a child and how it felt to be child in a situation where I perceived to possibly living on the streets or possibly not having food or freezing to death in the Ukrainian winter, right? Like all of those things were such a visceral trauma driven points in my life that now the only thing that I want to do with my life as a mother is to prevent my children from being in a situation where they're hungry, they're cold, uh, and they don't have a home.
Right.
But in our case, right, in America,
Right.
none of those things are actually ever a thing. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Now, is you can judge just like, is the food what I want it to be, yes or no or whatever.
Yeah, but
Are they
that's
eating right?
yeah.
That's
Now,
just a
but
privilege.
you've worked your way up the pyramid. At that
Yeah,
point,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, well, but is it organic? Or is it soy milk? Is it these are not
But I'm creating out of my trauma, I'm a trap trauma of not enough food, possibly not enough food and starving to death. I'm projecting that trauma into a narrative where, right, let's be honest, right now, our two refrigerators and a pantry and the storage room with food does not apply to where there's possibility of no food, right?
like, yeah.
But now, because the trauma is still there, the stress that I'm creating and the story that I'm narrating and projecting forward it's not the fact that there's no food, is the fact that they're not eating the right things. They're not having enough broccoli.
Right.
They're
So
not having enough carrots. The diet is not balanced. Can I get them to eat less candy and
Right.
more of nutrients?
right. So you've taken the same pain body
Trigger point.
trigger points, and now you can't reconcile the fact that we have probably a month's worth of food in this house, if not
Probably
more.
more, yeah.
If we got snowed in, we've got at least a month's worth of food, if not two.
Yeah.
Um,
Because I am living in
Right.
a pain body where
No,
I
and-
will never be in a situation where there's no food.
I also there is something comfortable about having a buffer to me too.
Well, no, but with you, it probably triggers something either in a different lifetime that you're unaware
Right, because
of
I grew up,
in America.
Squarely middle class America. Never was there concern about shelter. Never was there concern about food or water or safety
Or
not-
heat.
or heat. Not once. Not one. I think once there was a problem with the we had a heat pump, and there was a problem with it, and so we had to switch it to the auxiliary heat, and that was the extent of my heat problems growing up. We had space heaters and we had a fireplace. It was all of the whole bottom row or two of the pyramid. I'm looking here as if the pyramid's going to be
Maybe you
on the
should
screen.
just gonna leave the pyramid there.
I'll just leave the pyramid there.
I'm not. So I will say I'm not a fan of this pyramid, but it is applicable to the narrative of baseline survival triggers.
Yeah. So all that was taken care of for me.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about relationships though.
No, what you're saying is it was taking care of you, but because I think the trigger for you is, even if I was taken care of, if it's still a trigger forward, then there is something that is still a stuck pain body, either from a previous lifetime or from this lifetime, that you narrowed it in to where it's maybe not necessarily like lack of food, but in your case, I think lack of preparedness because of all of your Boy Scout thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're like the Boy Scout motto is literally be prepared.
Yeah, but let's be honest, the whole point of Boy Scout is to design some sort of trauma
and then solve it.
And solve it for survival. It's like, guess what? Here's your
It's
survival.
like,
Let's embed this trauma into you from age of 5 or 6 or 7, and then like make you feel better about it not being your trauma, but giving you the tools to solve it.
Right. I mean, it's
but
like
to begin with, here's your trauma. They give you the trauma.
Yeah. And then they try to empower you to solve it.
Empower you or make you feel better about having this trauma now that they handed it to you.
Right. And so So yes, there is great comfort in having a buffer of food, having a buffer of money, having a buffer of even water. We don't have a buffer of water, and remember we had a neighbor who had a big, I don't know, 500-gallon tank of water.
Well, the neighbor was
There
Mormon,
was
so that's
there
a
was
that's a
yes,
slightly different story.
but and I'm like, oh, maybe we should get one of those.
It's so funny because the neighbors are like, "Wait, we are Mormon and we're doing this because we're Mormon. Why are you guys doing this?" That was the question. I'm like, "Oh, you don't want to know why we're doing it." So it's either
we'll have a podcast about that in 15 years. You can listen to that.
Yeah. So it's either you're a Mormon and you're doing it for non-pain body reasons because your religion suggests this to you, or you are living in the pain body of food scarcity like I am, and you're doing it for that reason, right? But I think if I was Mormon, I would probably be a little bit more relaxed about it. Or maybe some Mormons do have a pain body of food scarcity, so those two are not mutually exclusive. But like to them, it was such an amazing preparation. Like, and they have a manual.
Yeah,
that talks about
I got a copy. I have a printed out copy of the manual just in case, in case of the apocalypse, and we don't have access to the internet. And now we'll have to, we'll be reading it by candlelight. Got to get some more candles too.
Yeah. So in Mormon religion, for those of you who are not familiar, you would consider them preppers, I guess, to some extent, like modern day term of preppers. But they believe that you need to have like a year and a half worth of food for the entire family. So like if your family has 5 people in it, you multiply the rations, and they have it all calculated. Yeah. So if you're living in the pain body of lack of food, like I am, there's a manual out there.
Yeah, and it's like, here's the, it's this many, there's a whole almost like a year's worth of meal plan, this many cans of green beans, this many cans of corn, this many cans of this and this and this. And it's, it gives you your 2,000 calories a day. And it has, a reasonable variety.
No, it is a big stockpile. Like it is an enormous stockpile.
A year's worth of food for an adult takes up some space.
Yeah, I don't understand what kind of house you would have to have in order to be able to store.
And theirs was really organized too.
Oh no, they were meticulous about it. Like great. As far as OCD of organization, prepping for the worst case scenario, water,
weapons.
They
had a lot of weapons.
I mean, I'm not a weapons fan, but as far as like organization and prepping and structure, I loved it.
Yeah, right.
I loved it.
Right. It's.
I would become Mormon just for that.
I imagine most people don't have a surplus of food in their house, and so if everybody gets snowed in, let's say the whole neighborhood, the whole town gets snowed in.
Is this their thought process?
The thought process is, I think we're going to buy food anyway. Why not buy a bunch of food and then the trick is you got to rotate through it.
Yeah.
Instead of letting it expire. We're not so good at that.
Yeah.
So, the can of green beans lasts for 2 years or whatever. Buy a year's worth of it.
And that is if you eat green beans, though.
Yeah, sure. Or whatever it is. And then, eat the oldest one now and replace it with a new one. And, other than the initial expenditure, which you can spread out over time, it doesn't cost you, once you have your stockpile, it doesn't cost you anymore. In fact, it costs you the same. Yeah, because every time you eat a can, you replace it with a fresh can that expires 2 years from now.
They had a great system, but we were not good at adapting that system to begin with because we did not have the prep manual.
Yeah. So you're going to buy it anyway. Just buy more now, and then if for whatever reason there's a gas shortage, or the power goes out, or you get snowed in, or there's a revolution, who knows? Then you're set. Everybody else, well, screw them. All you care about is I need to take care of my family. Period.
Is that
and everybody else is second. I think
is that what the manual says? Is screw them?
I don't think it says screw them, but I think it says. I think it is very much you are responsible for your family. Your family is number one.
Yeah.
And everybody else is maybe number 2.
I mean, you do realize we're. As much as I love this because it totally soothes all the points of my pain body, that manual is here's the pain body that you should have.
Right.
You should have, guess what? The second coming of Jesus is happening and it's not going to look good because I'm thinking that's what it's based on because they think the second coming of Jesus is not going to look good. And then thus you have to be prepared for the fallout of the second coming
Right.
of Jesus.
So you're gonna need food and you're gonna need guns.
Yeah, you need food and guns. And then what's even more interesting is supplies to board up your house permanent, like semi-permanently. Like
Like
you need to have all the wood to board up the house,
windows and doors.
windows and doors. So they had that too.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah. Because like you're basically setting up a fort. But if your house is not suitable for that, then you need to have a place out far away
Oh, that's
in the
right.
country
They had a farm.
in order to have this fort. Like,
Yeah. They had a
and so they had
went
like
to-
this amazing farm.
that was nice.
Where all the guns, I think they moved a lot of their guns there and a lot of their food there. And it was like away from the civilization,
Mhm.
miles and miles out.
Right.
But as much as I love it, I'll repeat this. I love this because it soothes everything that I am trying not to experience and stress out about in my life. But through all of that, it is just living your pain body, living your trauma, living your stress.
Right.
And instead of addressing it like, wait, why in the heck am I afraid of food and shelter if I live in America? I have yet to experience like
Right.
lack of
COVID
ceiling.
was the closest thing we had to lack of food. And it wasn't lack of food. Even in there were certain shelves in the grocery store that were empty. But it's like, oh well, there was plenty of the smooth penne pasta. Nobody wants that. But it's like, even in the height of, maybe it's different in other places, but even in the worst height of COVID or the worst snowstorm, there is still food at the grocery store. It may not be the food that you prefer.
Yeah.
But nobody is starving because of it.
Well, I think in the United States,
Paper towels? Okay, well,
COVID was the
paper towels.
first time where most of the citizens saw what shortage feels like and looks like.
Yeah. And so people started hoarding.
Yeah, people started hoarding, and that it kicked in that survival stress instinct. Versus like, I guess to me, I'm like, look, worst case scenario, here's how United States shortage looks like. That is like abundantly amazing because in Ukraine,
that would have been a good day.
In Ukraine, like you might not have an open grocery store, right? Because there's nothing to be sold there, right?
Yeah. That said, we weathered COVID just fine. We had some reserves. I don't remember even tapping into them though.
No, I don't think that was.
But we had toilet paper reserves and paper towel reserves.
Because that's your thing,
right? But that's your pain. It's a buffer. It's like.
Yeah, but going back to stress,
it's so easy to logic
the story and the narrative, right?
Yeah.
If you it is difficult to go, well, this is my narrative. I don't have toilet paper. I don't have paper towels. I don't have milk. I don't have, I don't know, whatever, right? Like, let's say toilet paper and paper towels is important to you, but they're not. But let's say it's something a little bit more important, like bread or milk, right? It's like, I don't have that, or I don't have formula to feed my child, right? So in that case, it is super easy to go, yeah, that is something I should stress out about. What if my child does not have formula, right? And I don't have breast milk or whatever, right? And they're under 12 months old. How do I feed my child, right? In that situation, there's a real scenario. Like this is a form of scarcity, right? It is an opportunity to recognize how you're reacting to this particular instance, right? How much stress you're choosing to acknowledge and allow yourself to take on from this real situation.
Yeah.
Now, situation might or might not disappear. The truth is, it will disappear once you release the stress. But that point of stress, especially if it's super real and you go, well, look, this is something that is my truth. This is not something artificial like toilet paper and paper towels. That is your opportunity to go, wait, what is it triggering within me? Is it triggering me that as a mother, I'm supposed to protect my child? I'm supposed to feed my child and I'm failing at it? Is that my trigger? Is it a trigger of like, guess what? The survival of my species as a propagation of humanity is at stake because I have a human being that I birthed into this world and is going to die because I don't have formula, right? And so evaluation of the story, seen through the story that is the stressor point. Like, I want to be very clear. I'm trying to tie in stress as a story.
Yeah.
See stress as a story. And so it is very easy to go, oh, well, word stress is almost too nebulous. Like you almost go, well, stress is just kind of like this thing. And then it's like you can't really,
Stress, yeah.
you can't really pull on a string and go, what is it? But instead of going, okay, I'm feeling stress, go, okay, if it's stress, therefore it's a story. You go, okay, what is the story? What is
Yeah.
this story?
Separate the stress from solving the problem at hand. You may have a problem. Maybe
See what the story is.
yeah. But
if you see stress as a story, then you can easily define what is the narrative.
Yeah.
What is the narrative of the story? What is the summary? If you were in English class in 5th grade and you read a passage and you had to summarize like in 2 sentences what this passage is about, that is the narrative of the story.
Yeah.
I am stressed out because I feel like I'm failing as a mother because my child does not have formula.
Right.
And that is the story.
Yes. From the higher spiritual level, that is a fantastic thing to do to help you realize what's going on in your
narrative.
Yeah. And I think that will also help once you identify that and ideally work on releasing that. I think that will help solve or present a solution, or maybe depending on what it is, realize that it isn't actually a problem in the first place.
Yeah.
The actual quote problem in your life.
Yeah. The actual trigger of the trauma.
Yeah.
The narrative, right?
Because they're 2 separate things. There's the stress, there's the quote problem.
Yeah. No formula.
Of I haven't won the Super Bowl, or I don't have formula. These are all problems. Some are more serious than others.
Yeah.
And then there's the reaction, the stress, the triggers around it, and
the story,
that you have built in your life.
Yeah.
And those are 2 different things that that have become intertwixed
because
for humanity.
Stress is nebulous.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
It feels like stress is just part of life. Oh, of course, everybody has stress. I'm stressed out about the this and the that and the money and the relationships and and the dying cat and who knows what.
Yeah.
I'm stressed out about it all because it's all in my mind and I keep thinking about it and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are aspects of those things that are poking me and triggering me.
Mm-hmm.
And one hasn't uncovered the story behind them.
Yeah. No, I think it's extremely empowering to recognize, okay, instead of having this nebulous cloud, step back and see what the story of this cloud is.
And you can choose to still have the stress if you want to. You can go, okay, I see. I'm stressed out about food because I grew up without food and it was always a thing. Am I going to even have food tonight? I see that. That's cool. I'm going to keep being stressed out. You could do that if you want to.
Yeah.
But I don't know why you would. Once you realize it and work to release that, see the episode on letting go. I think that goes a long way to releasing the stress. It is probably the best first step in actually solving the perceived problem in your life.
Seeing through the stress, step 1.
Yeah.
And then recognizing that the stress is caused by a trigger.
A lot of times people are stressed and don't even realize they're stressed.
Yeah. But that's the thing.
You are, you're walking around, your jaw, if you do this and your jaw is sore, it's because you're clenching it up. Maybe you're clenching it up when you're asleep and your subconscious going, ah! I don't know.
Yeah.
For the longest time, up until a couple of years ago, this was just incredibly sore. And I must have clenched my jaw, maybe during the waking day, maybe during a night.
I thought you dentist say you literally grind your teeth at night from stress.
The dentist says I grind my teeth at night because they're not pointy like they're supposed to be.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Now people have is it the incisors?
Canines?
Whatever those pointy ones are.
The canines.
The vampire-y ones. Mine are not pointy.
Well, because grind them down.
Yeah. So I'm stressed out about everything. Right. But I didn't realize I was stressed out. I was obviously stressed out. I was a nervous, anxious wreck. But I didn't, if somebody said, are you a nervous, anxious wreck? No, of course not. I've got it all together. I have to have it all together because then people will think good about me and then people will love me. Right.
No, right. This is the interesting part that I guess love about stress is it is so sneaky that whenever you start to take on early in your life these little tidbits of it, you don't even realize that it's stress.
Yeah.
But they're like this subliminal messages that you just take on. You're like,
Mm.
oh, you know,
I have to worry about this.
yeah, in my family, we stress out about
Yeah.
money. In my family, we stress out about making it to the next paycheck. In my family, we stress out about making the payment on the LG&E.
In my family, we stress out about what other people think about us.
Right.
That was my
And so like you just when you grow up, there's these things that just like come along
right.
as like nobody says in my family, in this family, we spend time stressing out
Right.
about money. Nobody says that to you.
Instead, it's this is really important.
Well, no, they don't even say that. You just see the energy or you feel the energy of people worrying about money. And so you go, oh, this must be how life is. We worry about money or we worry about other
Right.
people's opinions.
Yeah, because we basically literally inherit the behavior of the people who raised us.
Yeah.
Right? If they're angry, there's a good chance we'll be angry. If they're mean or abusive, there's a good chance we will. If they stress out about X, there's a good chance we will.
Yeah, but those things as narratives and stories that, let's say, did not have to be ours, but become ours because we have come into this family in order to have this life experience. We choose to bring on those stressors or those narratives as our definition forward. And then basically the question is, how much of your life will you spend blindly just allowing that to be a truth? This blind idea of this is what my narrative is, this is what my story is, and thus this is the stressors in the life that I'll continue to present. Like in my case, right? If I grew up and the narrative that I built for myself based on my upbringing was you have to be stressed out about warmth, shelter, right? Food and money, or I'm not sure about money, but definitely shelter and warmth.
I mean, money is just an enabler of those things to some degree, but I guess maybe in Ukraine, you have all the money in the world. If the store's not open, what are you going to do?
Yeah, sometimes it didn't matter whether or not you had money or not if the country did not have food on the shelves. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, if you had enough money, you can bribe enough people to get that food before it even hits the shelf. So there were those people.
Yeah.
Who had enough connection, enough bribe money in order to, the reason why the food wouldn't even make it to the shelf is because the people who could bribe the store people would just actually get that food for themselves before it even hit the shelf, right? So when the store opens at 7:00, guess what? By 11, nothing's left.
And I assume the store owners, they're not starving.
Yeah, right. Of course, right. Right. So in that case, right, money, even though we were poor, it wasn't really about money because almost like it's funny to say because I'm thinking about right now in the United States, money solves everything. There's almost this rhetoric like if you have enough money, all your problems are solved.
Right.
But that's not the case because I have lived in the country where you had the money, but you couldn't have your basic needs met. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Money certainly makes the bottom rungs of that pyramid nicer and more comfortable, at least in the United States.
Yeah.
Oh, now we have a bigger house. Oh, now we have a fancier car. Oh, now we have organic soy milk.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Yeah, but the narrative gets set in, and you don't even interpret narrative as a story that is good or is bad. You just interpret it as your truth.
You just absorb it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the stress comes because that narrative has set its place.
Yeah.
And then you're continuing, like people talk about ancestral trauma or family traumas and unprocessed traumas.
I mean, and it's coming in the first 7 years of your life,
so it is related to that trauma, that family story, that narrative that you took on that, like, guess what? We will never climb out of poverty. And that is what my story is. You will take that on as your definition. And unless you drastically start to rethink your personal narrative and truth and start to rewrite the narrative, you will live that narrative forth. And your stressors actually come out of continuation living of that narrative.
Yeah.
And so, these days people talk about like healing family trauma. That is what that is looking at the point of stressors and point of propagations of this one story blindly and continue to propagate that story blindly to another generation and another generation and another generations. And so the generation of the people right now I say that the time of the earth right now for many generations is opening into such positions where we're now able to see through the narrative and the story of our heritage and actually change the narrative. Like, this is the first time where we open our eyes and go, wait, I am actually responsible for the narrative that I propagate. Do I want to propagate this narrative that my mom and grandma and grandgrandma and grandgrandgrandma did? And there's like, it's almost like first time we're recognizing like, oh yeah, I can totally like change the narrative. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing stopping me from changing the narrative because I'm in charge of the narrative that I hold.
Right. It's been the default state is to just propagate whatever was either hammered into you or whatever you absorbed in your younger years.
Yeah, but absorbing is there because they're blind to their narrative.
Yeah, no, sure, but that's how it propagates down from generation to generation.
Yeah,
to generation.
it's not a malicious intent.
No,
right?
no, yeah, I don't think it's malicious
yeah.
intent at all. But the default state is if you don't become aware of it, is that it just continues to, and then you'll give it to your children, they'll give it to their children.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can bring some awareness to it, then you can break out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I do that as if it's an overnight thing, and some things may be, a quick
awareness
release,
is just super empowering.
Just having the awareness, that's not to say, oh, now I'm never going to stress out about food or money anymore, but you will at least recognize, oh, look at that. We used our last can of green beans, which I hate green beans, but that's the standard canned good. When I think of a canned good, it's green beans.
Right. We don't even like green beans.
I don't like green. Oh my gosh, I ate so many green beans growing up.
Oh really?
Oh, I hated them. Canned green beans.
Are they like? Do they have a lot of nutritional value packed for them, or are they just cheap?
I don't know. I hate green beans. And peas don't come in a can.
Do you remember the green beans that I made in the past, like fresh green beans, and then
That's good because those are fresh green beans.
Oh, you have canned green beans.
I had canned green beans growing up.
Oh, okay.
Which is better than starving to death.
But you guys were not poor.
We were not poor.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a culinary master in the house like I do now.
Well, maybe back, maybe I don't know. Whatever the story was, whatever the narrative was, it somehow propagated itself.
Yeah. I just like to pick on green beans because I don't like them. And I've eaten a lot of green beans in my life.
Family narrative.
Yeah.
Inheriting
so once you realize, oh, look, we ran out of green beans and now I'm feeling anxious about that. If you can realize it and go, oh, there it is again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm choosing to not do that. I'm choosing to rise above the situation. And, because if I'm down in the, do we have green beans or not maze, you never get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
You're stuck in it.
Yeah.
Until you realize you're in the maze and you go, yeah, I'm done with this game. And you may go down in and come up and down in and come up over and over and over. That's fine. But you at least have the option to rise above this maze and go, yeah, I'm not playing this, at least not right now.
Yeah, well, but it gives you an opportunity for awareness to see through any one instance of it as it continues to come up.
Right. Because if you have children, if nothing else, realizing it and rising above it, you're not going to be, at the dinner table going, oh, this is our last can of green beans. You're not going to, hopefully you're not going to push that into your own children.
Yeah.
Not intentionally. It's never intentional.
Yeah.
They'll be messed up in their own special way instead of your special way.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's not, like an example of this is because I have a thing with cold right now. I guess we talked about it in the past that, there's a valid reasons to staying warm.
Yeah.
But because I have a thing with the cold, one of the pain bodies that I pushed onto the children is make sure you're always warm. Like when you go outside in the snow, it's 3 layers of pants, 3 layers of sweaters, jacket or two, a hat, a scarf, gloves, like that. That's the thing. And I remember that was the narrative that was pushed on to me from my parents. I was completely overbundled. But at the same time, I do remember being cold.
Right. Just because you have a trigger and pain body around something doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong or not a good idea. Is it a good idea to have some extra food or some extra money or to bundle up? Probably.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's the stress and the reaction
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. And
the story around
the
it.
story, right?
That's,
and the story is I'm trying to protect them from something that I felt
right.
that was cold and bitterness, right? Not bitterness of like life bitterness, but cold, bitter cold, right? But I realized that is a narrative that my parents did not want to feel. And so they did not want me to feel the bitter cold, even though I did, right? But it's almost like, oh, you're trying to protect your child into it. But through that protection, you actually push that pain body onto them. And so, now because we're in this space of openness and trying to be aware all the time, the children are very obviously aware. They're like, Mom, you're doing it again. You're like, you're going to flip out about us going ice skating and you're going to try to get us to wear 5 pants and, 5 sweaters and it's just an ice skating thing, right? And so they are aware of how I react to it,
Right.
which is great because obviously I'm aware that if we're going ice skating, I have this trigger and I'm like, okay, where's the happy comfort of like, okay, I'm not going to get stressed out about it. I will step back. I realize that this is a trigger on my end. But then they're aware that I have this as a trigger and we have this as an open conversation.
Right.
Like nobody is in denial about each other's triggers.
Right.
And in fact, half the time they hate me for it, but I think this is a narrative that they're used to, right? This is another story that they're used to is like, okay, if I'm feeling stressed out, how do I open into it?
The result is that they wear more clothes than they want to wear, but not as many clothes as you want them to wear. So it's a perfect compromise because nobody's happy.
But that is an active pain body that I have that they are aware of, that they're helping me work through. But at the same time, I want them to be aware
Right.
that this is not something I want them to have. And I want them to challenge me on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It helps me to become aware of it, knowing that they're going to challenge me on it.
To begin with, being challenged on it, it's like it's an ego thing.
It's an ego thing, yeah.
But once you realize, this person actually loves me and has my best interest at heart, even though what they're saying is triggering me.
Yeah.
And wait, what if there is something to this? And, this actually is something that I should deal with and think about and work on and accept. And, about myself.
Yeah.
That's
no, if somebody
powerful.
says something to you, like, oh, look, you're doing this, and your automatic response is a no, that's a trigger.
Yeah.
And it's probably a yes, and you're denying something within yourself that triggered within you.
Yeah.
If like without thought, you're like, no.
And you do some mental gymnastics to justify why, well,
You're right,
I'm not, or maybe this time is different or whatever.
Yeah. If there's ever a reaction where you never actually took time to pause and think about it.
And you get that, that's where it is in me. It's right there in the heart. It's just like this, that's a word for it. This like defiance of, no, I'm not. I need to defend my position of no, it's okay, or it's okay this time, or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a sign that there's probably something there.
Yeah. No, it is an interesting step to like welcome criticism and like want people to say things to you that you're like, oh wait, there's obviously things that I'm blind to.
Because through criticism, that's an easy way to grow.
It is an easier way to grow than discovering yourself.
Yeah, because sometimes it's really hard to figure it out on your own. But it's really easy to see other people's things, which another step deeper may just be us projecting them onto the other person, which may say more about ourselves. But if you see somebody doing something, you're like, oh, there they go again. They're doing that thing they always do.
Yeah, but that's your trigger.
They might not. Well, yes, that's your trigger. But B, they might not realize that they're doing it.
But that thing that they're doing, it might be not be anything that is even wrong. It's your reaction to that thing. Are you saying something bad? Actually,
no. I'm saying when people say, oh, or when the kids say, oh, you're doing the the bundle up thing
Yeah, well,
again.
chances are I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah.
I mean, I
And you may,
specialize in that.
and at least to begin with, you may not have even realized it.
Yeah. To begin with, I guess I'm at some point. I think at all points I realized that I have this fear of freezing to death. Right. And so when I had children, they were like, when they were infants and babies, oh my gosh, they were bundled to the night, like just overbundled. And when I would go out into the public and I would see other babies and they're like uncovered, I have like a reaction of like, oh my gosh, they don't have enough blankets on that baby. Oh my gosh, the legs are exposed and it's like 40 degrees outside. Like,
I see that too. I also have that. Maybe I just got it from you.
yeah, you probably
Or because babies are supposed to be kept all warm and bundled. And it's like, you see, and it's like, obviously I could be a better parent than this guy.
No, and I'm not judging them. I quite literally have this influx to save the baby from the cold. Like I guess maybe at some point I would like judge like, oh, why are they not? But not like from the judgment standpoint of like, why do they not have the same trigger that I do? Like it's almost that where when you're judging someone, what you're actually saying is, why does this person not feel the need to overdress their child and keep them warm? That's
Right,
what you're saying.
But like if you don't realize it, then it's back to, well, it seems obvious that you need to keep your child warm.
Yeah.
Which maybe it does, but it's the trigger on top of it that's the problem.
Yeah. No.
Yes, keep your child warm. Duh. Don't overheat your child. Duh. These are, yes. But it's that trigger on top of it. Did we want to go into relationships?
Yeah, sure.
Because you were saying that, it's really easy to see how, with money or stuff like that, it's where stress can come from around these objective things.
Mm-hmm.
But in relationships, whether that's some sort of, romantic relationship or a relationship with a friend or a boss or a child or whatever, it's they're sneakier.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of it comes from what we try to derive out of the relationship. And like for a romantic partner, you may think, oh, I'm supposed to get X out of this relationship. She is supposed to make me feel happy or whole or complete or loved or whatever. And if I ever don't feel it, I get stressed out.
And it's their fault.
And it's their fault because they're not holding up their end of the bargain. They're not carrying their whatever it is.
Is that how you felt?
Yeah. Yeah.
All of your life?
Yeah. But that's sneakier because there's no numbers. You can't plug that into a spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But so how do you unravel that?
You unravel that by, I guess, realizing that it's nobody else's job or responsibility to make you feel a certain way. That you are the captain of the how you feel train. Boat, plane, trains have engineers, right? They have captains. You're you're the captain of the how you feel ship, right? Mixing metaphors. So if you feel a certain way and you're looking to blame somebody else for why you don't feel the way you want to feel, that's a sign that there's some misplaced stress. You're putting the stress on your wife or your boyfriend or your boss or your kid or whatever, which, we all do. I still do it. But I'd like to think that I'm, see it more and quicker now than ever before. Because it, yes, other people can impact your life circumstances, obviously, right? Someone comes up and punches you in the face. Yeah, that sucks. But, how you react to it, how you react to, something that happens in your life is is your choice. Sometimes it doesn't feel like a choice. Sometimes it feels like an instinct or just a snap reaction. And at some level, yes, you get punched in the face. You react back. But on a simpler example, someone like we just talked about, someone points out one of your a trigger, and you react back. No, I don't. That's the same thing, just to a maybe a lesser degree, but it's the same. It's the exact same thing. Noticing those things is very important, and noticing when you're projecting the cause of your, I was going to say dis-ease, which might be an interesting word to use, disease. The cause of your stress or your anxiety onto someone else. It is not on them, right?
Yeah.
It is on you, and there's obviously a connection between you and them. There is this interaction between you and them that is impacting it, of
Mhm.
course, but your stress is based on your reaction to the situation,
Yeah.
and it may not be easy, but you can choose to react a whole bunch of different ways. You can choose to react by murdering someone. You can choose to react by walking away. You can choose to react by saying, hey, I am being really triggered right now. That's on me. That's not on you. You're pushing my buttons, but that's not on you. That's on me for having these buttons that are there to be pushed in the first place. I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to go meditate. I'm going to go do some breathing. I'm going to just walk away, because otherwise I know that my gut reaction would be to snap back and say something mean or bring up your mother or whatever it is
Your mother.
that is objectively going to make the situation worse between us. And
Because you're responding from a trigger.
yeah, because you're responding from a trigger. You're responding from that anxiety that you have about how it's making you feel.
Right.
It makes you feel a certain way, right? If you get punched in the face, it makes you feel like literally attacked. It makes you feel violated. If someone is pointing out you would see it as pointing out a flaw, but they see it as, maybe they see it as, well, I'm trying to help by maybe helping them recognize something in themselves that they don't see.
Mhm.
They have a tendency to overreact, or they have a overreact's a bad word, because there's a judgment in there, to react a certain way in this situation because it's a trigger to them, and I want to help them see it.
Mhm.
But to the person receiving that, it feels like an attack.
Yeah.
So it feels attacked, or I'm being passed over for a promotion from the boss, and I feel like I'm being you know unseen, or whatever it is. You feel a certain way due to actions or inactions of another person. Yes, but they trigger you to feel that way.
Mhm.
They don't make you feel that way. They trigger you to feel that way,
Well, it's
which is
triggering a trigger in your body.
yeah, which is an important distinction. You don't make me feel angry. You trigger me to make myself feel angry.
Yeah.
Which, if you look at life like that, other people, not just other people, other things, your
Mhm.
cat, the tree fell over in your yard, whatever it is, that doesn't make you feel angry. That triggers you to make yourself feel angry.
Yeah.
If you look at your emotions like that, it's, to begin with, is incredibly frustrating, because it's like, oh my gosh, I have done this to myself my whole life. But soon after that, it's incredibly empowering, because it's like, oh, I don't have to do this to myself for the rest of my life. I can choose my reaction, or at least I can recognize my reaction as a reaction that I have chosen instinctively, sure, default state, sure, but you can break out of that through repetition, through awareness of
Awareness and ownership.
of right. I mean, the super easy, obvious example is, when someone quote criticizes you. Now, there are people who will criticize you just to be mean. Yeah, that says more about them than it does about you. But I'm at least talking about people who have your best interest at heart, that are, you may think they're criticizing you, but they're actually trying to point out something to help you. It hurts the ego. It does. It feels like a jab or an insult or whatever. It does. But if you're choosing to react like that, then that's what it is.
But there's a leftover resonance of that statement into the trigger that is your open pain.
Yeah.
Open wound.
Yeah.
Right. Because if they said, remember like last time in the podcast, you said, like, if they said, like, oh my gosh, you're just a terrible guitar player, but you don't actually play guitar and you like never even picked one up, it wouldn't even register.
Right.
Because that is not an open wound within you that, has a trigger. But if
Right.
I were to say, like, oh my gosh, you're a terrible mechanic, right?
Right.
You would have a trigger.
Right. It's like no, I'm not. I can fix stuff.
Yeah, right. Do you see what I mean? So like the fact that we have that definition and narrative of self that has our subconscious positioning in the specific set of circumstances.
Their statement is discoherent with your view of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Your
perceived view of yourself.
Your desired view of yourself, right?
Sure.
Because your desired view is in fact a narrative that is trying to mask the pain bodies
your view
behind
of yourself and or what you want to project out to other people.
Well, the project out is because you have a narrative of being hurt. Your childlike state of being wants to be offset from all the things that it actually thinks about itself. And so the narrative is your, let's say, oh, look how awesome I am. For most people, that's what it is. And the second that like awesomeness gets questioned, the trigger will be there. The open wound will be there is only if you're projecting this narrative forward to offset the opposite thereof on the inside.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead if you do have anything else to say, because I want to bring something in as an example.
I was going to say, if I said you're a terrible guitar player, there's no thing.
Yeah.
Right. But if I said, I'm trying to think of something that you're just
graphic designer. I think I'm a good graphic designer.
You think you're a good graphic designer, right?
Yeah.
If I said you're a terrible graphic designer.
Yeah.
Does that hurt?
No, that would be it would be an insult.
I'm trying to think of something that you just, there's no doubt about that you're good.
Oh no, it doesn't matter. If there's an open pain within me to where I'm not feeling 100% complete and confident, period, anything that I do in my life will be a trigger.
You're bad at breathing. Is there? But
I mean, I'm probably bad at breathing though. No, what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter what the perceived insult will be, if your beingness is not complete and whole in any way. It doesn't matter if I agree or disagree on any one thing, right? As long as there are any part of me that is not complete and whole, and this is something that I bring into my narrative as a set, it will be a trigger. Even if I think I'm a good graphic designer, even if I think I'm a great cook, right? If you bring that in those instances, I actually think I'm really good. And then, those terms are kind of nebulous. Being good at something is just a matter of perception, right? Like all of the things being good at is just a matter of perception.
Right.
You know what I mean? I actually think I'm a good singer. I have never had anyone tell me not to stop singing. Like everybody always says, please stop singing. But I actually think I'm good. And so in that instance, right, it doesn't hurt when somebody tells me to shut the fuck up. Yes. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but I'm just not resonating.
But you're singing for you. You're not singing for them.
I'm singing for them. Yeah, I'm singing for me because it makes me happy to sing. And I'm a good singer for me. Do you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But it still does hurt when Annabelle tells me to shut up. Do you know what I mean? But, now I kind of turn it into the game. So I'll almost like want to bother her in some way. Not all the time, but sometimes I do. Yeah, but as long as there's self-confidence and self-narrative wound is available to be triggered, anything that is part of your ballpark of a play that is being said as an insult will be a trigger, as long as you're not complete in your awareness that people saying bad things to you, regardless of what they are, is a thing. Do you know what I mean? Because that is a trigger as a whole. Like that triggers very nebulous, in fact, right? Because it's almost like undefined. Like, why all of a sudden I care about you telling me that I'm a bad graphic designer, right? Like, why? It's not that. Is that you are taking something that I have defined as me, Tanya is a good graphic designer. I think I'm a good graphic designer. And therefore, the second you question that, you're seconding you're questioning or you're triggering my being as a whole. Because my narrative and my story
your
is here's
identity
identity of me.
gets tied in there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what I actually perceive it as is an attack on my identity as a being, when in fact you're just talking about graphic design skills. And if I'm not aware of that trigger and that pain body of like, wait, what does it mean for someone to trigger me into questioning my integrity or my identity or my faith or my whatever? Because that's at the core, right?
We could do a whole episode on identity.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what stress is. It's stress in the sense of an insult from another being, or in a relationship wise, is basically you perceive it as an attack on your identity. And your attack on identity is what I'm saying is designed to be the opposite of your pain body, right? Why do I feel the need to be good at something? Is because at some point in my life as a child, I was told or I made a decision that I'm not good at anything, right? Like, oh, look, you don't have a skill set to offer to the world. And so therefore you're just useless and whatever. And so therefore you're not accepted in the world because you don't have anything to offer it. Right. That was my thing. When I went to the trigger that is when I went to preschool for the first time. I went there and all of the kids have been going there for years and years and years, right? And they like can read and they just know things because they went to preschool. And it was my first experience with preschool. And I come in there and I'm like, wait, they can do all this stuff and nobody has taught me to read yet and nobody has taught me to do math yet. Like, I've just been playing around at home on my own as a child. And so I had that wasn't even a thing. But because the net difference between them being able to do all the stuff and then me not, it triggered me into the pain body that I already had of my table leg.
Yeah.
And so because the pain body was already there of like, look, I am not like everyone else and everyone else is good and you're not because you're tied to a table leg. With me, that was a confirmation of it. And so the trigger came because here it is for the first time I go out into the world and that pain body is validated, quite literally validated. Now, at the age of 4, am I actually aware of the fact that I have designed this narrative where I'm not like anybody else and therefore I will never fit into the world?
But it sure is soaking in at the age of 4.
No, it was already soaked in. That was it. I already had that as a narrative. And I still remember that as my first proof of why that story was the truth.
Nothing can mess you up like some sort of perceived comparison to another person.
Or an orphanage full of other people.
Sure. But that's, because you can always find someone better than you. Pick whatever you're best at. You can always find someone better than you.
Yeah, but my origin story, the trauma that I was living my entire life as a child is you're not like everybody else. Everybody else is good and you're bad.
Yeah.
Everybody else belongs and will be adopted out and will be taken care of. And because you're bad, you will not. You have nothing to offer to this world and everybody else does. Right? It's like, I don't know how you overcome that. And you spend the entire life proving that narrative to yourself. Like, oh, look, here's another proof. Here's another proof. And here's another proof.
Either proving that narrative yourself. Yeah. A, proving that narrative yourself. And B, trying to disprove that narrative to the world.
But that's the opposite. Yeah. You're just lost in that narrative. That is the story
which is
you're
back
lost
to
in.
the guy with the Oscars and whatever. He's trying to prove to himself, prove to the world, I am worth something. See, I've got these Oscars. See, I've got this house and these cars and this money and everything.
Yeah,
but he doesn't feel it.
Yeah. No, my triggers, most of the time, like I can see how my entire life narrative has been where I did not fit and I did not belong, right? Like that has always been it, right? It's through the life circumstances that I would think that are not my faults, but in fact, you're right. If I'm in charge, then I'm designing the narrative. I don't fit in, right? I am not like everybody else.
I felt the same way.
Yeah, but you were not told that.
I was not told that, but I just inherently felt that.
It's funny because I say this, right? I was told that, right? And and then this is a whole other topic, but I'm told that and I adapt that as my truth and that is my narrative. And it's actually like this negative thing for the longest time. And then at some point when I realized like, wait, I'm living this table leg narrative, there's this recognition of like, it is kind of true, but it's not a bad thing.
Yes, I had that too. I
Do
had
you,
this like, oh, I'm weird and different, and that makes me bad, or I don't like it, whatever, for most of my life. And then eventually it's like, oh, I'm weird and different, and that's awesome.
yeah. But the truth is like, and this is the funny part is each one of us is weird and different.
That's the thing.
And it's the most amazing thing in the
Right?
world.
What do you want? Some sort of 1984 situation where everyone's exactly the same? That
Yeah.
sounds awful.
Well, no, but that's the thing. It's like we are somehow, the narrative, at least in Soviet Ukraine, and maybe unintentionally from my parents, was like, "Oh yeah, you're just." I think what they wanted me to say is, "You're completely different, and it's great."
I do believe that was the goal.
Right, but then because the pain body in Ukraine was like being different is not safety. Being different does not have you fit in. Being different does not have
Yeah.
you belong, right?
Yeah.
Um, I took that to be as a negative thing. And so something that was meant to be positive, um, I took it on as
Right.
a depravity. Is
Yeah,
that if
because
that's the word?
yeah, you could look at it either way. At least,
Yeah.
especially over here, you could
Yeah.
be, oh, weird and different, or Elon Musk is weird and different. There's no way around that. But love him or hate him, he has achieved great success. That's the whole pain body situation there. But weird and different, at least in America, is not a death sentence.
Yeah.
It could be very polarizing, and it could go either way. You think Jeff Bezos seems weird and different. You know,
But we're all weird and
all the
different.
people that we admire. We're all weird and different. But all the people that we admire in sports and in business and whatever are very weird and different.
This is an episode that we should have is there is so much beauty and empowerment and actually our truth in the weird.
Yeah,
Like if you just like I don't even know how maybe we should be wrapping up, but how to like embracing your own weird is the most magical thing you can do for your
yes,
own self.
I think that is true.
We should have an episode on that, so I'll stop talking about it. Um,
I'm gonna write down weird and different.
yeah. So stress equals story. Once you allow that to happen, recognize what the story's narrative is, what the summary is, and then pick out what is actually triggering within you. And then through that awareness, you'll just, honestly, it dissipates. It doesn't have to dissipate, but awareness brings it context
Right.
and it empowers you.
It allows you to dissipate it, or at least begin to dissipate it. Because otherwise, you're living as you have always lived, and it's like, are you happy with that?
Yeah.
You may think you are, but are you really happy with that? It's like I thought I was happy
While stressed
back
out.
in the blindness. Yeah, but I didn't realize how stressed out I was. I didn't
Yeah.
realize how literally and figuratively tense I was all the time. All the time.
Yeah.
And what's exciting is, in 5 or 10 years, I'm going to look back and go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how stressed out and tense I was in 2024, even though now I feel less stressed out and tense than ever before in my life.
Yeah, no, I think that would be apparent. I'm noticing, obviously we're 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 doing this because we want the journey to be documented and we're not by any means at the end, not that there's such thing as an end. But that's what's interesting is like this progression of like, oh, this is how I thought I felt, but then like 2 months later, here's the newest level of peace and harmony that I can reach. And then as stressors come on, you're like, "Oh, look, here's all the things that are still being triggered." And then you, like, have a different view on it or a different take on it. And the journey is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.